Hello, everyone. Welcome to Let's Talk Off the Podium. I have a conductor with me, JoAnn Falletta. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks.
I wanted to know what you've been up to recently with the COVID-19, everything happening around the world. What have you been up to? How have you been keeping in touch with your audiences?
Well, since March 12th, I've been in Buffalo. I came back for concerts that I thought were going to happen, but of course didn't. But then got very busy. And I'm sure there are a lot of conductors like me who are doing everything they can to be in front of their audiences. I mean, we are broadcasting archived concerts every week since March, every week. So I have to edit them and curate them. We're creating a ton of video presentations, whether it involves everybody in their room playing together or individual people or small chamber music. We're doing a television show with some of our musicians playing chamber music. So a lot is going on, and staying in touch with our audience as much as we can. We send them little gifts, the videos or podcasts that we make, and I mean, it's not the real thing. We can't wait to get back on the stage, but we know that our relationship with our audience is critical to us in Buffalo, and that's what we've been working on.
Yeah, I wanted to know a little bit about this new record. I think it came out about a month ago, right?
This one with Richard Danielpour.
Yes.
Yes, Richard Danielpour is an amazing composer. You probably have run into him. He is. We were in school together, and so I've done a lot of his music, and I've followed his career. And he's really played all over the world. But he had this dream for many years. He says since he was a child, because he grew up in a mixed religious background of Christianity and Judaism, and always was sort of celebrating everything and having family celebrating everything together. And he heard the Bach as a young child. He heard the Bach St. Matthew Passion, and that was a life-changing experience for him. And so he and I have been talking for several years about the idea of a passion in Richard's voice, and what would be different about it, because Richard put together the libretto himself, and all based on the Bible. It was one sentence that he put in that he spoke himself of his own voice, but he thought several things were missing from the traditional passion representation. One is the European writers did everything they could to make the situation seem rooted in Europe. It was not rooted in Christ's land, in his landscape, in his life. And he said, that's wrong. That's wrong. He's a Jewish man, and we know what it was like around him. We know the landscape. It has to reflect that. So half of the piece is in Hebrew, and it's so beautiful. I mean, it's so extraordinary. And he also felt, and he was right about this, and I think this is why he was talking to me about it so much, the fact that women had no voice in the Passion. Women had no voice in the Passions. They were ignored. I mean, they were there. We knew they were there, but they never had anything. They were never allowed to say anything. So he said that's wrong. So two of the most important characters in this are the Mother of God and Mary Magdalene. And when they sing always in Hebrew, and they sing at some of the most poignant moments. The Kaddish, for instance. Or they sing the Passover celebration. Beautiful. And then he also he made a point of choosing two fabulous African-American leads, one for Jesus and one for his mother, because he said he wanted always people to understand how Jesus became disenfranchised from the world. I mean, he was an outsider, even though he was living there. He was not welcomed in his own city. And he felt that connection was important. So it's an amazing piece. Richard writes for voice spectacularly well. I mean, I think the highlights are the choruses that he writes. And the piece is a full-length evening, very moving. I think I had a chance to do it several times, once in Oregon, or I think we did it twice in Oregon and then twice in Buffalo. And we recorded the Buffalo performance, but it was not without controversy, I have to say, because there is some feeling that revisiting the story of the Passion is painful. It's painful, especially for people who feel that they may be held responsible, and no one is held responsible. But it was a little bit controversial, and that for Richard was difficult because his main purpose in writing this was bringing people together.
You said controversy. How do you deal with that? Just specific to this piece, but I'm sure throughout your career you've dealt with these situations. How do you deal with it mentally? It could be so tough and overwhelming to deal with these situations. How do you deal with it?
Well, it's hard. It's hard because you usually, well, we were. I mean, as you are when you're working on something, we were so involved in it. We were so close to it that it felt really hurtful at first. Like, no, that's not what we're doing. We are trying to bring people together and celebrate the Jewish life of Jesus, with so much respect. But then we discovered that what we needed to do was we needed to be open. We had a town hall meeting, and many of our musicians came to it. Many people from the Jewish community, people from the Catholic community, and talked it through and heard their voices, and we came up with a beautiful solution. They asked if they could make a statement in our program book, and we said yes. And they wrote a statement talking about how they feel that revisiting these stories can arouse anti-Semitism in the world. And of course, that was the last thing we ever wanted to do. So, and they understood that. And, many of the people who were part of this, I wouldn't even say protest, but part of this discussion were people who are our subscribers. We see them at all the concerts, they love it. But I think it was very important for us to tell our concert goers that this piece was multi-layered, and it did have in the past connotations that we have, don't espouse and don't believe in, and it was important to let them be able to say that. So I think that helped. Many of them came to the concert, and afterwards they told me it was very hard to hear, especially the scenes when Christ is about to be killed. It's very hard to hear that, and but they wanted to be there for the orchestra. So it makes you realize how complex the world is. I mean, we keep trying to bring people together, Tigran, bring people closer. And we say, and I believe this, that music can bring people close together. But in this case, we had to talk it through.
Yeah. It's tough. These things are tough, and the world is constantly changing. And you've done such a great job with the Buffalo and Philharmonic and many other orchestras that you worked with. Specific to that, what are the plans for next year? I know it's uncertain, but what are the plans? What are you thinking you might do with your orchestras, the many orchestras that you work with next year?
Well, mostly concentrating on Buffalo. I mean, we've had, I think, 12 different plans, Tigran, since March. Of course, we had our season planned before, which is quite a big season, as we normally do, because we have a full orchestra and we like to use everyone. And progressively, that season became different. I mean, it became smaller. It became focused then again in the middle of all of our controversy too here about what African American voices have endured and why they're not on the stage with us. That made a big change in our plans too. So finally, I think we have it down to, after carefully measuring our stage, we are hopeful that in the end of September, we can begin with an orchestra of 35. Now, our orchestra is about 80. 35 would mean that we would not be able to play with everyone, and we would be doing a lot of shuffling around. Some strings wouldn't play one week, and then they play the second week. And I have to tell you, at first I was very kind of disappointed that we weren't going to do our Mahler 2, which we'd planned. I mean, Berlioz Symphonie Fantastique, that we planned to do. But then I realized, okay, those pieces are not going anywhere. We can do them in a year or 2 or 3. But there may be a lot of pieces that we have not done that we can do now, that we wouldn't think about because they were smaller. Pieces, like the Ginastera Variaciones Concertantes, a fantastic piece, but we wouldn't think of it normally. We might do a bigger piece, from Latin America, or the Frank Martin Concerto for 7 winds and strings. I mean, it's just all of a sudden I felt, okay, let's embrace like a new world of repertoire. And I got very excited about that because it's almost like, here's an opportunity handed to us. Okay, don't do the big crowd pleases that you have to do every year. You can't do them now. So revel in these interesting things like hyper divertissement, the pieces that people don't know and are going to really enjoy.
Yeah. Well, I conduct the Northwest Mahler Festival here in Seattle, and we were going to do Mahler 9, and that's
Oh.
canceled, obviously. So it's tough. It's tough, all these cancellations. What's one piece, if you're thinking about right in this moment in your life, what's one piece that you can't wait to conduct one more time? Or maybe a composer that you would love to collaborate with again on a new piece?
Well, there's a piece I did once in my life, and I would love so much to do it again, and that is the Bernstein Mass.
Oh,
I
wow.
had the chance to do it with the Virginia Symphony in a couple of performances down there. It was amazing. It was, I mean, it's everything people say it is. It's like a three-ring circus with everything going on at once, and not one moment to stop thinking in an hour and a half or hour, 40 minutes of constant music. Um, it was so overwhelming and so emotionally draining and uplifting at the same time. I'd love another chance to do that. Now, I don't know when that might come. And I was able to do also in Virginia the Mahler 8, and I'd love another chance to do that. But I have to say, I feel very lucky to have had a chance to do that piece. And it may be a one time only.
Ah, I'm sure it'll happen again. You mentioned Bernstein, and you've done some master classes with him. What are some memorable moments from those master classes?
Oh, well, he was amazing. You know, he lived in New York, so when we were studying at Juilliard, he would come and you know appear now and then in our classroom, and of course we always knew he was coming. And but we were always terrified, Tigran, as you can imagine. He not only was he like larger than life, although he was not a man who was tall. He was a very short man, but very powerful. And when he walked in the room, it's like the room crackled with electricity somehow. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. He was that kind of a force. He would come in with his little cigarette holder and his jacket slung over his shoulder, and it was amazing because everyone in the school tried to squeeze into our rehearsal room. Not only the musicians, but the actors and the dancers, all the faculty. They had to see him, and you had to be in his presence. He was just so astonishing, and uh, it was quite amazing. He was kind to us. I mean, I guess he realized we were terrified. Um, and I got on the podium, spent a lot of time on the podium with us, so conducting behind us or, moving around. And his message to us was really almost always the same. It's not about how you're moving your baton or how you hold the baton in your hand or how you really beat six or what pattern. It's not about any of that. It's only about the emotion.
Mm.
And I remember we're studying Carmen with him, and he was saying, you have to just be there. You have to be feeling the sun beating down on you in the bull ring and smelling the blood of the bull and hearing the crowd screaming. And it's 100 degrees in Seville and it's wild. That's what it's about. And he was right. He was right. And he lived his music. I mean, I'm sure you've seen him or seen videos of him. He lived music like that. I mean, everything he conducted was internalized in his heart somewhere.
And I've said this a number of times on this podcast. Bernstein really was a figure that really he cared so much about the community, so much about the youth, and nothing against music directors now. You're a great example of the exact same things I'm talking about. Is that I just wish more music directors now were so involved in all of this, and you are, and there are others, but it's just somehow
it's changed a bit. I think it's
yeah.
different, which is too bad because music directors like Bernstein. I mean, he was a New Yorker. He wasn't born in New York, but he lived in New York. He loved New York, and he was around, and he cared about that orchestra. And I think that sometimes in this kind of jet setting thing where people change orchestras all the time and travel around a lot, there's a feeling of yes, they spend time there, but it's not where their heart is.
Yeah.
And now, especially if we're facing some difficult times now, I think you have to be 100% committed to what the future is going to be for your orchestra. I
Yeah.
mean, we have to design it, right? I mean, we're trying to make something happen where we can be healthy and come back and be strong. You can't do that from far away.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. You said something, and I don't know if this is a direct quote, but you said something about Buffalo, and you said, "I will never leave Buffalo." I think it was something like that, right? Am I right?
It's,
Uh,
And that doesn't mean the orchestra necessarily, because I will retire at some point. But the thing is that the city, and I didn't grow up here. I mean, I grew up in New York City, and I've lived in many places. But in Buffalo, there was such a connection between the orchestra and its community that it was life affirming to me. It was, well, this is the way it should be. That an orchestra of all ages, all backgrounds, because Buffalo's not a wealthy city. It's not a very chic city, but that the people of Buffalo adore their orchestra, and they take care of it, and they come and they're open-minded. It could be a new piece, it could be a world premiere, but they're there, because it's their orchestra. And the sense of that was so powerful in Buffalo, and I think that goes back decades and decades and decades, and it might have something to do too, Tigran, that the city itself has had a rough history. It's a beleaguered history. I mean, not only with the weather, which is, I have to say, is not as bad as people think, but it has that kind of reputation, and it went through some real poor years and downturn of economy. But I think it brought people together and focused them on what's important. The bills, of course, are Albright Knox Museum, which is an astonishing museum, and the Buffalo Philharmonic, and it was very important to them.
Yeah. You had to leave a couple of orchestras for various different reasons. Sometimes, you just move on to a different thing. What is it like to build something and you put so much energy, so many different projects, and then you leave? How some of your feelings, thoughts about leaving an orchestra?
Well, it's bittersweet. I mean, you love them so much that sometimes you think that I can't believe that I'm not going to be conducting them every month or every couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But I think when you stay a long time with an orchestra, you do feel that you've built something.
Yeah.
And hopefully when you're leaving, you feel, okay, I've created something that will support them. I've brought people around them. I've created a family for them. So that family is going to be there for them. And they'll go on to something different. I mean, orchestras are changing how they present things, what they present, how they think about music. And that's good. That's very good. So if you feel that you've brought people in close to the orchestra, I think that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. Well, you've done this for many years, and this coming year is an exception because of so many changes that you have to make to your planning. But programming a season, what do you think about when you're just starting to sketch out the season, the soloists, the pieces that you're going to program?
Yeah.
What are some things that you're thinking about, to program for that season?
Well, I like a lot of diversity in my programs. I don't really like to have a theme for the season. I mean, there's just too much music to bring into it. So my programs generally are quite eclectic, and I really love this idea that in one program you can have a Baroque piece and something that was written in 2020, something brand new, that it's something, music is a continuum, and we all belong there together. It's not like we have the new music week or the Baroque week. No, music is all, the fabric just develops, and it keeps developing. So I love new music, and we had to postpone two world premieres that we were going to do, and we'll get them on the following year, but that was hard. And we love to have composers with us and to give the world premiere of their pieces. We do a lot of unusual repertoire for Naxos because we have a recording contract with Naxos, and they have always encouraged us to find lesser known or even unknown music of the turn of the last century, I would say, like late first half of the 20th century, from all over. A large part of that has been from Europe, of course, and that's been eye-opening for us to play a piece that's never been played. That we have to really figure out how to make it sing. That's great for us.
Changing gears a little bit, your fans, you're one of the most famous conductors in the world, in America especially, and you've taken specifically Buffalo, to new heights, and it's known around the world and the country. But what's something that your fans, your followers don't know about you that you're willing to share with us on this podcast?
I was trying. I knew you were going to ask me something like this. Well, I maybe a lot of people don't know that one of my favorite activities is snorkeling. I don't think they can imagine me snorkeling, but it is. I'm a big snorkeler,
Wow.
and I love that. I mean, that maybe is just some, not non-musical. I write poetry, but some people know that.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, I think people do know a lot about me, and part of the part of the pleasure of being a music director in today's world, as you know, is that you can be open to your
Yeah.
to your community.
Yeah.
And that's so much fun when people can come up to you after a concert and ask a question about a piece or ask a question about your life.
Yeah.
Or bring you some cookies because they know that's the flavor you really love. I mean, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Um, Other than classical music, are there other genres that you listen to, and what are some artists or genres that you listen to?
Well, I grew up as a classical guitarist, and I played the lute as well, the Renaissance lute, which I adored. So I love the world of Renaissance music, and I feel in a way that that's some of the most complex, some of the most emotional music. And I know people don't tend to think of Renaissance music as emotional, but I find it's
Mhm.
fantastically moving. And someone like John Dowland, who's a hero, of course, to me and to other lutenists. But that's a world so far apart from what I do, you know, every week of my life. But it's a world that sort of refreshes me and brings me back to something very special.
Yeah. Well, you have an interesting story about how you got into conducting. Why conducting, and why did you even want to conduct as a guitar student? You were a guitar student at Mannes, right? And then you
I
switched to
was. Well, no,
conducting.
I was actually, I became a, well, it started with the guitar. You're absolutely right. My
Mm.
father gave me a little guitar and a lesson the next day on my seventh birthday, and classical. And I had a European teacher, and I fell in love with it. I just totally fell in love with the guitar. I just remember how totally in love with that guitar. I just would think the fragrance of the wood was so wonderful, and I would play the open strings endlessly, on my first day of with. But I loved it, and I guess my parents realized I was so intrigued by music. They started taking me to concerts, and I remember a concert at Carnegie Hall. I must have been 10 or something. It was Beethoven Symphony Number 6.
Mm.
I'd never heard that live, and I was amazed by it. And I said to my parents then, I said, that's what I want to do. I want to be that person who makes that happen. But I didn't know what a conductor did. Well, they didn't know either. So it was okay. And I said, well, okay, we'll just see what happens. So when I went to Manus because I was serious about guitar, and that was the only school in New York that was teaching classical guitar as a major. But I went as a double major, and they wisely said to me, because I think it was still at a time when there weren't many women conducting. Um, they said, well, let's try guitar for the first year, and you can audit the conducting classes, and let's see how it goes. And then I became a double major. But I always felt that the two things were a beautiful part of my life together because um, conducting is so public. As you know, you're always talking to people. You're making decisions. You're in charge in a way. Um, but classical guitar is so personal and so intimate. And for me, it's been great to continue to play because it makes me remember what goes into making a sound. When my musicians are playing around me, that how much goes into making that violin sound that beautiful, or how many years and years and years of study and how many lessons and hours of practice. So I think it's good to keep a little hands-on feeling there.
Wow. What's a life-changing moment? This is something I've asked many of my guests in over 120 episodes now. A life-changing personal moment and a professional moment that you're willing to share with us.
Well, I think, the life-changing professional moment, I think, was when Virginia Symphony and I went to Carnegie Hall, and for them it was the very first time, and it was a real risk for us to go. We were a small budget orchestra, and there we were in Carnegie Hall. We somehow had raised the money from the community, and we'd gone, and the night before, the Philadelphia Orchestra played, and all the musicians were saying, "What are we doing here?"
Mhm.
But we played, and I remember at the end of that concert. Uh, the thing that always stays with me is how they rose to be 100+% of everything they could do. That night, it was perfect. It was absolutely perfect. And we recorded the concert live, and it truly was perfect. And so far beyond anything we thought we could accomplish. And I think that the look on their faces looking at me and me looking at them was one of complete astonishment to think we could do this together. So that remains, I think, both personally and professionally. I can't really separate them because, the personal connection with those musicians and knowing how nervous they were and how excited they were to be on the stage of Carnegie Hall. I remember a little story of Carnegie. Everyone, of course, had their cameras with them, taking pictures. And the the stage director came over and said, "Maestro, pictures are not allowed on the stage of Carnegie Hall." And I said, "Oh, well, we're all from Virginia. We've never been here before. Well, pictures are not allowed on the stage of Carnegie Hall. I'm going to go away for about 5 minutes and I'll be right back." So I thought that was wonderful. Everyone took all the pictures they could, and the cameras were gone by the time we came back. I mean, it just is a feeling of, yes, we did that. And we still talk about it in Virginia.
I forgot to ask earlier, but the guitar, are there any other guitarists who are also conductors that you know of?
Yes, Bradley Thatchuk,
Yes.
who conducts. Yes, and I think the name of his orchestra, I just want to be sure I got the name right, is the Niagara Symphony. Am I right? It's the Niagara Symphony.
Yeah, I think so.
He is a fantastic guitarist.
Yeah.
He is fantastic. And we met years ago, and I didn't know that. And I was just thrilled. And actually, I see him quite often because we're close to each other. Niagara's not far from Buffalo, and he often comes to the Buffalo Philharmonic to conduct for us. And he is fabulous. He's the only other one I know.
Uh-huh. Well, there is another one here in Washington, Yaniv Attar. He conducts the Bellingham Symphony.
Oh, yes, I do know Yaniv. Yes, but I don't know much about him, though.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a guitarist as well. He's a guitarist as well. And he's been on this podcast. So there it is. Three guitarists that I know that are also, conductors. You've done so many different projects with Buffalo specifically, but tell me about the international guitar competition and what's so unusual and, different about the competition.
Well, really, just when I first came to Buffalo, of course, I was really playing guitar and I was enjoying it. And I found out that the director of the radio station, Don Boswell at WNED, was also a great lover of guitar. And he had just moved there from Dallas, where they sponsored the Van Cliburn competition. And he said, JoAnn, we should do something like that for guitar. And we talked about it. And we realized at that point there were solo guitar competitions, but there was nothing for guitar and orchestra. There was no way that a young guitarist could come and have an opportunity to play with an orchestra. So we founded it for that reason. And the level has been astonishingly high. We didn't know what to expect. And people came from all over the world. The first winner was from Poland. And in all these years, we've never had either a Canadian or a United States winner.
Oh, wow.
So they've won. I mean, we've had Russians, we've had South Americans, we've had Europeans, but sometime we will. But it's been amazing to see the level and to have them play with us.
Well, the way I heard about you, the way I found out about you is, maybe a decade ago, I saw this documentary called "A Woman is a Risky Bet," 6 conductors. 6 orchestra conductors.
You must have been one of the very few people who ever saw that.
A teacher actually showed us that film. How did that come about, and how much has the world changed since that documentary?
Well, that came about by a woman I've stayed in touch with, a great Swedish filmmaker who was interested in exploring this question, because in Sweden it was a similar situation. There were 1 or 2 women, and they were having difficulty in terms of getting accepted or breaking through the glass ceiling. And so she got a grant to visit different countries and tape the stories of women conducting. And it was wonderful for her to do that. I mean, it was just, she really, I think she created a very moving document, and is supposedly now working on another one, revisiting people years later.
Okay.
But things have changed, and that's the good part. I mean, in this one that she'll do now, that years later, there are a lot of young women studying conducting. There were a lot of young women winning positions on very high levels, and that seems to have changed in the last 10 years or so. I mean, dramatically in the last 10 years. It was changing slowly. Now, when I started, I thought, frankly, that things would change very quickly.
Mhm.
because it seemed that things for women were changing in other fields.
Yeah.
Women were becoming bank presidents and, politicians. But I guess we have to say, I mean, you may agree with this, that our profession is very traditional, and change is slow, because we treasure the tradition of the past, and that's a good thing. But it's been change has been starting to happen at last.
Yeah, yeah. It's great that the change is happening. With everything that you've done in your career, is there an advice, something you would tell young musicians as they're struggling, especially through COVID-19, this situation, but also just careers? It's not an easy field. You've had, I'm sure you've probably didn't pass many auditions as a young.
That's right. That's right.
So
Yeah, it's
what
not so.
advice would you give them? Or what advice would you give to young musicians? Doesn't even have to be young
Yeah.
conductors.
Well, I guess this would be for young musicians of all types. We are so um, we're so we're so tuned to seeing young success at a very early age, or someone at the age of 21 becoming music director of a major symphony orchestra, or someone who's 18 years old winning a piano competition, and so we feel, and people have told me, young people have said, "Oh, I'm 25. I'll never make it. I'm too old. Life has passed me by." I said, "No," and especially in COVID now, people are saying, "Oh, what are we going to do? We have, this. Our life is over." I said, "No," because music professional life is very long-lived, and it takes a long time to develop. Luckily, it does, because it keeps life interesting. You keep learning all the time. You never say, "Okay, here I am. I've learned everything." Never. So. That journey is very important. And so 1 year of, having to sort of hibernate because of COVID doesn't mean your life. And it also doesn't mean that if you haven't made it by the age of 19, you never will. In fact, I always tell them it's probably better not to have made it by the age of 19. You have a lot to learn still at 19 years old, so you'd like to have that growing period. So you can grow as a person and as a musician in a good way.
Yeah.
So I just told them, don't be in a hurry, but work hard, and things will happen.
Yeah, you've probably done thousands of performances and also many premieres. Is there a moment you're thinking, there's a tough situation, there's something went wrong on stage, something fell apart, the lights went out, something? Any memories that come to mind,
Well,
or too
the
many?
worst of all was actually my very first concert, subscription concert, as the associate conductor of the Milwaukee Symphony in Wisconsin. I was very young, and this was a big deal. It was the first subscription concert. I conducted some youth concerts, but this was a very big deal. And we started with La Forza del Destino, which seemed to be going well. But at some point, and I only learned this afterwards, there was a short in the in the stage, the mechanics of the stage, and the front part of the orchestra, which was all the violins and the first violins and the cellos and myself, sunk to the bottom of the pit, which was like way down. We slowly started to descend. The rest of the musicians were on the stage, and they stayed up there. No one batted an eye. I mean, it was like we just kept playing and playing. At a certain point, we were completely, not seen. We were down in the pit playing. Somehow we all cut off together, and it was the scariest thing, but it was the most amazing thing to see how professional musicians are. They all knew something was wrong, but they weren't going to stop playing. And
Wow.
we played to the end. We ended. Everyone cut off, and afterwards, people were telling me. This always makes me laugh, because they said, "Oh, we thought it was part of the music," and that was only because Lucas Foss was my predecessor in Milwaukee Symphony. And Lucas was a maverick when it came to the strangest and wildest new music. He would put things on with, acrobats running through the audience, and, clowns in the orchestra. And he'd done so much of that they just assumed, oh, this is one of those pieces where the orchestra has to descend into hell or something. So they were okay with it, the Milwaukee Symphony audience, but that nothing quite like that has ever happened.
Wow. Well, with all the premieres that you've done, what's your process like? I mean, how do you approach it? Do you when you're commissioning a piece, are you actively in conversation with the composer, trying to, direct them? I guess as a conductor, it's a little bit different, because I've had Sharon Isbin, who's a guitar player. She's come on the podcast recently, and as an instrumentalist, it's a little bit different, I think, than as a conductor. But
Yeah.
what are your some collaborations that you've done in commissioning a piece?
Well, they're all different. Sometimes, you choose a composer because you like her work or his work, but then I think you leave them alone. I mean, there's some parameters, like we usually tell them the number of people we have in the orchestra, and we'd like to stick generally with that. But of course, if you feel you need an accordion, well, that's all right. We'll find it. Um, we generally tell them the ballpark figure for length so we can know we can program around it, because we have to put the whole program together before we actually see the piece. And then some composers like to send you the first movement, or here's my first, here's the exposition. A lot of composers don't like to share it until it's at a certain point when it's done. So I always ask them, if they can, to be with us from the first rehearsal on. And a lot of them say, no, I never do that. I never want to hear it at the first rehearsal. And I said, no, that's the most important time for us, because we have 3 rehearsals with you. And in the first rehearsal, we can make a lot of changes. We can know what you're thinking. We can work on things overnight. So please be with us. So I usually have them there for the whole time. They're sitting on the stage. Some of them are nervous. Some of them are excited. Some of them have a lot to say. Some of them don't think of things to say right away, and they want to mull things over. But for me, that's the exciting process, because I'm not a composer. And the closest I get to the mind of a composer is when I'm doing a new piece with them, when they let me into their process, when they say, I just didn't feel that had enough of the strength I wanted. What do you think if we tried the bass trombone added to that? Okay, we'll try it. So all of a sudden, we're all thinking, even the orchestra is excited by this. We're thinking like the composer's thinking. We're part of his brain, maybe. And we want to do what he wants. What do you think of this? Or I even have musicians sometimes, making suggestions. Should I take my part up an octave? No. I said, leave it where it is. but just trying to be part of that process. And it's thrilling. I mean, I love to do new music when the composer is there. I always feel disappointed when they can't come, or when they come for the performance only, and you feel like you couldn't really have any of their voice.
Yeah. It's always great to get the composer there. I want to go back to guitar again. And I know I did this a couple of times now, but do you still play guitar?
I still do.
Wow.
I do it now mostly with chamber music, and a lot of that happens with members of the orchestra, with Virginia Symphony, to play a little benefit recital or fundraising recital, or with Buffalo. I'm going to play with our principal oboist a little bit later this month, and it's fun for me. And it just keeps me in understanding the way musicians feel when they're trying to make things the best they can, the beauty of a sound, the sort of speed of a vibrato, all of those things that they're constantly thinking about, at least to be in touch with that world. I mean, they're playing on a very, very high level every day, but to be in touch with that world and not completely forget that is good for me.
Wow. Well, I think we've come to the end. Anything else you want to add? Anything you want to say about anything we've talked about, or to your musicians, to young musicians, anything?
Well, first of all, to you, Tigran, this was a lot of fun. I mean, I have a feeling we think alike in some ways, and it's fun to get to know you. But I know as a musician, we seem to be facing some difficult times. I just want to say to musicians, remember this, that, you'll talk to musicians, and there are very, very few of them who would ever change their life to do something else. That doesn't mean they don't complain about being musicians all the time, but that's part of being a musician. You have to complain. But the deep personal satisfaction of making music is something that very few people have the privilege to ever know. And we as musicians know that. So it's a great gift to be a musician.
Thank you so much. That was JoAnn Falletta on Let's Talk Off the Podium. I hope we could do this one day in person. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Let's Talk Off the Podium. If you enjoyed this episode, please comment, share, and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next episode.